I'd like to start on the existing protocol, but I'd like to acknowledge Ms. Angela Crowley, Assistant Executive Secretary of the Inter-American Drug Abuse Control Commission, Mr. Rafael Prada, Head of Supply Reduction Section of CCAD, Mr. Garrett Wilkerson, the new Director of the International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Agency, stationed here in Nassau. Members of the expert group from the member states, of course representatives from OAS permanent observer countries, and representatives from other international and regional organizations, other invited guests. So, good morning. Good morning. And on behalf of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, I wish to welcome you to our shores, where some parts were battered by the Hurricane Dorian, while other parts remain a visitor's paradise. It was important that we actually get the message out that the Bahamas is still very much open for business. And so we had to reach out to Leisure Magazine and several other international publications. Because initially, if you notice, the North Americans in particular were constantly saying that the Bahamas is battered. The Caribbean is saying the same thing. So we had to remind folks that we're actually an archipelagic nation, and it's just the northern islands of Abaco and Grand Bahama that were vaporized, essentially, by Hurricane Dorian. So let me, at the outset, thank fellow member states for their outpouring of support and extraordinary acts of kindness, especially Sedima. I was on the phone last night with Sedima, Lieutenant Colonel Mike Jones, and they were very concerned about what they can do to assist, and so we had to give them a priority listing of what we need, because we're getting a lot of aid and support, and so we now have to reframe that to ensure that we get what is needed. And the acts of kindness extended to us since Hurricane Dorian devastated our northern Bahamas. So the minister would have made several continuous visits to Abaco and Grand Bahama since the all clear was given, not just to witness firsthand the tremendous path of destruction left in Dorian's wake, but also to put his hands to action in the rescue efforts on these islands. So we as a government are faced with many challenges, but we're working hand in hand around the clock to bring relief to victims and ensuring that some semblance of normalcy is returned to our people. Without a doubt, we have suffered great loss of lives and infrastructure, in some parts wiped out, but certainly we have not lost our resilience, and we will rebuild stronger than before. Ladies and gentlemen, personally, I am honored to be invited here on behalf of the Minister for this two-day CCAD meeting on maritime narco-trafficking. I would also like to thank the commissioners of the Inter-American Drug Abuse Control Commission for the confidence they have placed in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas to take a leadership role at this level and at this time by electing the Bahamas to serve as the chair of this group. And it was only 3 short years ago that we served as the chair of CCAD and hosted the 60th regular session of CCAD here in Nassau. For the past 3 decades, CCAD has assisted member states in addressing drug use and abuse in the region. And indeed, the Bahamas was at the 1986 Specialized Conference in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, that recommended the establishment of CCAD and has been a member of the Commission since its inception. And our current role reflects our continued commitment at the political level for the work of CCAD, which for the past 29 years has been at the forefront of hemispheric initiatives in drug control. Our relationship with the Supply Reduction Unit has also evolved, and only in January of this year, together with the unit, we held a workshop on new psychoactive substances. Our geography just off the coast of the United States and on the route to illicit markets in North America and Europe, and our geographical configuration, some 700 islands, and we keep using that number, when in fact there's really over 2,000 islands and keys, spread over more than 100,000 square nautical miles of water, makes the Bahamas especially vulnerable to illicit trafficking, especially maritime, and to persons who are engaged in illicit activity, period. So it's a challenge for us given our limited resources. We are all aware of the potential adverse impact that narco-trafficking can have on countries, cities, communities, families, and individuals. Included among these are the economic effects, the creation of false economies, threats to financial services, and the possibility of blacklisting, undermining the authority of governments, the corruption of politics and politicians, through the funding of preferred candidates, giving direct political power to drug lords, the corruption of government administrative personnel and heads of agencies. Of particular concern is the corruption among law enforcement agencies, the inevitable health and social consequences of the circulation of drugs among the population, or payment in kind. So much of the crime on our streets is drug-related or associated with the platform that illicit drugs have created. Guns from small arms trafficking, for example, are being used to commit robberies, burglaries, and indeed homicides in our country. Moreover, like the situation in many of your countries, we have seen these trafficking organizations branch out into human smuggling, along with the smuggling of drugs and firearms. And in the past, we used to categorize countries as either producer, transit, or consumer nations. So you're either an owner or a worker, talking about your relationship to the means of production. I don't mean to be Marxian. But given the changes and proposed changes in national and local laws of our member nations, we may have to rethink these categories going forward. Although many of the historical routes and methods will remain, new ones will develop that reflect the demand for and supply of new substances. Ladies and gentlemen, maritime narco-traffickers, if nothing else, are extremely innovative. They employ methods using vehicles and vessels that operate underneath the water and on top of the water, with contraband placed inside these vessels and attached to the sides of the vessel. They have used small go-fast boats and large tankers, private pleasure crafts and commercial vessels, just to name a few methods of transport, and are extremely focused and have the resources to carry out their mission. So they're funded, they're intelligent, and you have to think like them. What this says about drug control strategies at the national, regional, and hemispheric level is that strategies must also be wide-ranging and they must be balanced. We too must use our collective talents and resources if we wish to have a chance to remain a step ahead of these organizations. This is the approach that the Bahamas continues to take in its decisive action against drug abuse and illicit trafficking. As a country, we have been guided by the various regional, hemispheric, and global drug control initiatives, such as the International Drug Control Treaties, relevant instruments of the Organization of American States, and other multilateral and bilateral agreements. Within the country, the current challenges and reality of the situation has resulted in a need to build a new base for the Royal Bahamas Defense Force in the southern Bahamas, upgrade the force's fleet, and place new balloons, etc. However, we also know that with such an expansive territory of 100,000 nautical miles, if we do not work together with our key partners, we will not see the kind of results we would like. Policies, programs, and activities developed in the Bahamas or in the Caribbean, in Latin or North America will not be sufficient by itself to effectively address the related articles and recommendations in the various conventions and treaties. In particular, the 1988 United Nations Convention against the illicit traffic in narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances. During the various sessions taking place today and tomorrow, the speakers will address various maritime narco-trafficking challenges occurring in our region. As a hemisphere, we have committed ourselves both singularly as sovereign nations and collectively as members of CICAD to a continuation of our struggle against the illicit drug trade and all of the other social ills that are attendant to that trade. It is imperative then that we continue to work together. under the principles of shared responsibility and the acceptance of and respect for the realities in each member state. Because we all have our little nuances, unique circumstances, etc., that are often lost in the dialogue. Regardless of the strengths and vulnerabilities of our individual nations, we all need each other to solve the problems that confront us. That's a fact. So I pledge my commitment as the Permanent Secretary and on behalf of the Minister and that of the Governor of the Bahamas to maximizing our resources wherever they're needed. And finally, it is my hope that each of us shares in a pleasant, dynamic, and fruitful conference. Thank you. Good morning.